Welcome to the Bearing It All podcast, where we dive deep into the backstories of celebrities, CEOs, and multi-million and billion-dollar entrepreneurs. There are no rules as we aspire to inspire by sharing real experiences, triumphant comebacks, and what the road to success really looks like. It's all about the grit behind the glamour. Great. Well, welcome to season 2 of the Bearing It All podcast. Today, I have Todd Skelton. Do I say your last name right?
Absolutely. Todd Skelton. Yes. Not skeleton. Skelton. Right.
Your wife has corrected me more than once. I just want to make sure I get that right.
You got it.
You are a multi-million-dollar CEO, entrepreneur, real estate mogul. You just recently bought your dream house in South Florida. You're a father of 3, a grandfather, and recently you were responsible for a $1 billion sale of a floundering enterprise that belongs in like the movie series of The Godfather because it's chock full of scandal in the middle of a global pandemic. But what I love and what I'm so excited to share with this audience is that you started out as a Pizza Hut manager and selling meat out of the back of your car. So welcome to the show, Todd. How are you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Barb. I'm very excited to be here. Great. It's a great story.
It's a great story and what people really want to hear. And, you know, this is our first episode of season 2 of Bearing It All. And the impetus for me starting this podcast was growing up, I would see people with these fabulous lifestyles, whether I saw that they were wealthy, they were fit or healthy, or they just were really happy. I wanted to pull these people aside and be like, how'd you do that? How do I do that? What can I do? What decisions did you make? And now this podcast gives me this opportunity to sit down with CEOs and influencers and celebrities just like you and say, all right, I need the backstory, Todd. I need to know first. I want to start from the beginning. I want to hear about Todd as a child. And were you born into this? Were you born on third base? Were you born with a silver spoon? Give us the skinny. Give us the Todd Skelton growing up, true Hollywood story here.
Yeah, listen, anything but silver spoon. My mom and dad were both educators, school teachers. And I grew up in Louisiana, in Metairie, Louisiana, which is, a couple of minutes outside of New Orleans. Great place to visit, not such a great place to grow up. And I didn't even realize that until I got out when I was 19 years old. But we lived in a lower middle class home. I'm not going to say that we had 3 square meals a day. We had all the basic things that we needed, but certainly did not have an extravagant lifestyle, to say the least. And fortunately for me, I will tell you that's probably one of the key reasons why I've been able to have the success that I have is because, I started young. I started working at 15 years old, mowing lawns, maybe 14. Hell, I don't know. But I do remember that there was one lady who I mowed her lawn next door, and she said, hey, I got a friend, and this friend has some pretty high grass, and she wants me to bring you over, and she wants me to mow that lawn. And I said, okay, let's go. Now, I had a goal in mind. And my goal was I had a fish tank and there was a brand new filter that I wanted for this fish tank. And I'll never forget it. It was $20, right? So I knew in my mind I somehow needed to extract $20. So I get there, and Barb, when I tell you the grass was tall, it was 18 inches, 2 feet tall. And I'm out there and I'm struggling, and they're inside drinking their iced tea. And I'm sure she expected me to tell her $5. This is quite a few years ago. And we got all done. It was about 4 hours worth of work. And she says, okay, how much? And I said, $20. And she about fell out of her chair, and she looked at me and she goes, $20. And I said, yes, ma'am, it's $20. And she gave me the money, and I went and bought my filter for my fish tank. And I'll never forget that story, because that was the first goal that I inadvertently set in my life, and asked for the money and got the money. Now I deserved the money, but I'm sure she wanted to give me $5,
Well, what I love about that and what is so important is your parents didn't give you the $20 because maybe they didn't
Right,
have it and I think that to me, that's what I extrapolate out of like, you have no other options but to go out there and figure it out yourself. And you figured it out. So I absolutely love that. And I think we're missing that a little bit,
right.
like go out there and be an entrepreneur. My twin brother and I used to shovel driveways when it would snow and we had to go door to door and it was just our way of making money. So do you have siblings? Did they and when did you know this was going to be the life and the lifestyle that you were going to live?
No chance. I had no chance of having this lifestyle in my mind. I didn't manifest it. I didn't know anything about any of this BS at the time. Obviously it works, but I didn't know it at the time. But you know what? Actually, as I think about it, when you say sibling, I do have a sister. And probably even before I started mowing lawns, my mom during the summer would have me watch my sister because at that point she was the president of the teachers union and she didn't get the summer off as a teacher. So my mom said, listen, I'm going to pay you 50 cents an hour and you're going to watch your little sister. And she was or is 5 years younger than me. And so I babysat her and all my friends laughed at me because I was constantly having to watch my sister and they were playing baseball and I'm dragging her along with me. But I kept copious notes on the amount of money. I remember one time going to my mom and it had been like 10 days that I'd been watching her. Like it seemed like hours and hours every day. And she owed me, I don't know, $15 or something. And she again was in shock. She goes, I owe you how much? And I said, Mom, here's the timesheet. It's $15, right? So that really preceded the whole grass cutting thing. So yeah, I had a sister who was 5 years younger than me, and she was my half sister, and we grew up in that lifestyle, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, relatively small home. It was funny. I heard I was doing a Peloton ride the other day, and somebody said back in 1982, what was the average home price? And I said 65 grand to myself, and the number was 65 grand, and I think our house was about $50,000 brand new at that time. So we were lower middle class, New Orleans raised kids.
So how did you get out of New Orleans? Where did the path go from there? Like how did you
Yeah.
get from I need all the nitty gritty?
Yeah. So basically, I started the Pizza Hut career. I started the Pizza Hut career when I want to say 17 or 18. I had a couple of jobs in between where I was a busboy and a waiter, and I got fired as a waiter because I wasn't old enough and to really wait on people properly. And it was one of the better experiences of my life because I'm like, what did I do wrong? And, to this day, I'll never forget that experience. I think everybody needs to be fired at least one time, right? I sucked. I just wasn't good at it, right? So from there, I went to South Florida, to Daytona, not South Florida, to mid Florida, I guess, Daytona Beach, Florida, over on the East Coast with Pizza Hut. And I went as a restaurant manager, and I had been a restaurant manager for multiple years. And I think I'll rewind a little bit because this is an important part of the story that has just recently come out. I've obviously known it all these years. But when I was in Louisiana and it was time for me to go to college, obviously my parents being educators, I went and signed up at University of New Orleans. And I went to school for 2-3 months there. And Pizza Hut came to me. And at that point, I wasn't the lead sales manager. I wasn't the lead manager of Pizza Hut at the point. But they said to me, hey, if you want to be a full restaurant manager, like the lead dog, you're going to need to give us 50, 55 hours a week. And you can't possibly go to school. So what's your choice? Now that seems kind of backwards, but we're going back in the late 80s, right? When this happened, mid 80s. And I said, well, let me think about that for a second. I'll take the money. And I went to work. And I didn't tell my parents for 2 or 3 months that I hadn't actually been attending college. And so when my mom said to me, so what happened? She saw the books in the back of my car and they hadn't been removed from the bookcase in a long time. And I said, Mom, I couldn't find a parking space. So that was the joke. I couldn't find a parking space at the University of New Orleans. So I went to work. And you can imagine, Barb, they were quite angry. Both Mom and Dad were angry that I didn't do this. And I look back at it and I go, there's been many a times where I've thought about, should I go back and should I do this? And of course, today, based on where we're going to get to at the end of the story, no chance. But do I regret it? I do in a way, but did it lead me to the place that I needed to be? 100%. If I had gone to school and not taken that career, I doubt that I would be in the position I'm in today. So, for me, it was the better option to take the money and build a career.
So, Todd, do you feel not having your degree almost gave you a little bit more, I don't know, humility in the process and something a little bit more grit, as opposed to falling back on our degree because we have been taught this narrative of like, once you get your degree, you'll get a good job. Like you almost are above everyone else. You have some sort of marker of superiority. I want to know if it played actually to your benefit.
Yeah, for a different reason though. I had a chip on my shoulder, and the chip was everybody else that went to school that was going to be successful, and here I am, and I got to grind it out, right? And I got to prove that I made the right decision in life. And as things progressed with the Pizza Hut career, when I got to South Florida, I became their youngest area manager, and I had 17 Pizza Hut restaurants at the age of I believe I was 29 at the time. So it was a big deal for me. And that kind of validated for the first time that I had made the right decision, right? So when I got that job, now let's be honest, $35,000 a year driving a Chevy Lumina. Okay, so it wasn't all that exciting, but yet it was a pretty successful job for a 29-year-old to have in a company where I had the balance sheet and the profitability statements and the oversight of 17 restaurants at 29 years old as the youngest guy in that company. And obviously Pizza Hut was owned by PepsiCo. It was a big Fortune 500 company.
Wow. So with all of these, they're not there. So that's not a franchise. That's a privately owned company. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. Yeah. I thought it was like a corporate company. So I thought maybe it was like Domino's. What did you learn about leadership in that experience? And what did you did you struggle with anything? Because you're clearly managing and scaling and you're young. What did I want to understand, because you do offer some leadership tips and hiring tips, and you're so damn good at it. So I'd love to hear what you learned in the journey was.
I got my ass kicked, right? If I'm being honest, because I wasn't ready at 29 years old to take care of 17 other individuals who were running, multi-$100,000, several $1 million businesses, because these were big. Some of these restaurants were big restaurants. So I had to basically baptism by fire as I jumped into this thing. I had a good attitude. And so when I walked in the room, typically what would happen is I had the best attitude and I would light the room up. But then when we got into some of the specific leadership skills, I mean, think about yourself, Barb, at 29 years old, were you a great leader? I wasn't a great leader, but I did learn it. And as we progress through this thing, I think that one of the biggest punches in the gut for me was a gentleman by the name of Chris, and I don't remember his last name, but I remember him. I can remember his face, and I remember the visit. And he came down, and I was an area manager, and the next position up was a district manager, and a district manager would have probably half the state of Florida, 50 plus restaurants, 5 or 6 area managers. And then there was the regional guy. And there were only a couple of regional guys in the company. And this guy, Chris, came down for a tour with me. And, the stores were all ready to go. And we got in the car and we visited, I don't know, probably half of my stores. They were standing tall. The general manager of the stores were all well-versed on their numbers. It was a great visit. And we finished the visit. And I'm about to let him out of the car. And I said to him, so how'd you think it went today? And he said, Todd, I think it went well. He goes, but I think there's a question you have to ask yourself. I said, okay. And he said, I don't sense that this is enough for you. And I don't know if you're challenged. And I'm not sure this is for you. And I said, whoa. I'm your next district manager, right? And he goes, well, you're in line to be my next district manager. But what I'm saying to you is, I'm not sure this is the right thing for you. And I really took a step back. And now the truth was, at that point in my career, Barb, I was getting up at 10 o'clock in the morning. I was getting out of bed at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I was going to work and I was doing the thing because the thing was too easy. It was very mundane. And that kind of ultimately led me to leaving that company and getting in the car business, which was the next chapter of my life.
Wow. This guy was like your guardian angel saying you were meant for more. That's
Was.
insane.
And I didn't know him that
What?
well, Barb. I did not know him that well. And he picked up on that, honestly. And I thought he was like, I'm like, who the hell is this guy to say this to me after that visit? He was right.
Wow. And why? And so you left Pizza Hut, moved into the car business. What made you choose that industry? Why was that the next step up? Because you're not going to make a lateral move.
Yeah.
It had to be a step in a positive. Tell me about that.
Well, there was one little intermediate step, and it was called Amway. So the whole time, now Chris didn't know about Amway, so it had nothing to do with that conversation he and I had. But I had an Amway business, and I was basically selling the dream, right? Multi-level, one of the first multi-level businesses. I was out at night, driving from Daytona Beach or at this point from South Florida to Orlando, showing people the business plan, driving back home at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, slapping myself in the face. And again, I think probably part of this is because I wasn't challenged at the job I was in, but I was still the lead dog in the Pizza Hut world. So at some point, weeks or maybe months after Chris had that conversation with me, and I started to come to the realization, Pizza Hut decided that they didn't want me to be involved in Amway anymore. Now they had no legal right to say that to me. And I said, okay, well, we're at a crossroads here. And they said, right, well, we'll accept your resignation if you won't quit Amway. I said, well, I'm not quitting Amway. And I said, well, I'm not going to quit. And they said, okay, we'll accept your resignation. So I had a constructive discharge, as the lawyers would say.
Yeah.
And I got a lawyer, and I'm like, this is a bunch of BS. And she's right. She said, you're right, and you're going to win this case. And I said, okay. So I had a friend in Amway who was an auto guy. He owned a used car lot. He was very successful. And he said, Todd, you need to go get in the car business. Not with me, because I don't have the biggest business for you. So Barb, I went to the Chevy dealership where I had bought 3 cars. That's the only thing I knew about this dealership, is that was where I bought my cars. I showed up, first visit, sales managers, talked to the sales managers. They don't want to have anything to do with me because I'm brand new. I'm a green pea, as they call us. Second visit, about a month later, I go back in. I try to get a job. They don't want to let me in. Third visit, now we're probably 3 months down the road, and I run into the general manager, and he sees me and he goes, you know what? There's something to you. I'm going to hire you. And the irony of the story is, the day I started there, 4 sales managers that were the desk managers for the new and used vehicles, the new vehicles and the trucks, were all fired. So the guys that wouldn't hire me were no longer there the day that I started, right? Now, one had nothing to do with the other, but it was interesting to me how that played out. So I didn't have to battle with the guys that said no to me, right? Now, in that 3 months that I wasn't at Pizza Hut, I wasn't not working. That's when I was selling meat out of the back of a van, basically. And that was with Dave Smith. And Dave Smith was also in the Amway business. He was my upline direct at the time. And Dave Smith used to be a Chippendale dancer, right? So this story, you just can't make this stuff up. And Dave's got a meat business, and he's a Chippendale dancer, and he's an Amway star, right? So Dave's like, Todd, let's sell some meat. And I'm like, let's go. So we're in the back of the van, and I'm out selling meat. And for the first 2 weeks, I had to do training with Dave. And then I was in the van by myself. And Barb, when I tell you, you have a cooler full of meat, you go out to the streets, you knock on doors, and you do the pitch. And I don't even remember what the pitch was, but it is a brutal job. And if you get in somebody's house and you sell boxes of meat, man, that is a winner for the day. So while I was trying to get the job in the car business, I sold meat for 3 months. The most humbling job of my life. It was horrible, but I did it. But
what is your one takeaway? Give me one thing that you can take away from selling meat out of the back of your car. What did you learn? And that is embedded in your business acumen.
That the rejection is not personal. The rejection's not personal. I learned that. It was personal for the first 2 weeks, and Dave kept saying to me, Todd, they're not telling you no. They just don't want the product, and you need to get better at selling the sizzle, basically. And that was what I learned.
You know what I love about that, what you just said, is that when I scaled sales teams as well. And I would tell people that those really hard no's in the field were actually people that I planted in the field because I wanted them to build the muscles of persistence, resilience, tenacity. And it's those experiences that really do fortify your relentlessness. Like when you start learning a no is a no, whether it's nice or it's not nice, it's just a next. And you become very unstoppable. But that skill you can't buy, right? Like you just nailed it of like, you can't take it personally just because something doesn't work out. And I love that I personally started out in direct sales and door to door because it gave me skills that I feel this for you when you say that. I'm like, I think you needed that middle ground to fortify those muscles that otherwise you might have been a little soft, you might not have been able to
No doubt.
handle, the next stages of your life, right? They always say if you want to get stronger, you have to be challenged. So I had to ask that question, and I do love that part of your story, and I also love that you had that redirection. But what I'm super curious about is why did you go to Amway? Did you start feeling like why Amway, commission? I want to understand that about you because I think there's got to be something in there that ultimately led you to where you are today. Because you could have taken safety. You could have been safe,
sure.
like just go make your 30 grand a year.
You know what I think it was? I think it was, I somehow knew, I can't tell you how many times that I would go out in the evening and walk around and walk the dog or do whatever it was that I did. And I would say, okay, today I'm making, $35,000 a year with my Chevy Lumina. And if I get to be a district manager, I get to drive an Impala and I make, I think it was $15,000 or $20,000 more a year. And how would this all play out? And I think somewhere in the back of my mind, and honestly, I don't think I could commit that I knew for sure at the time. I said to myself, man, there's got to be more there. And then somebody showed me the Amway business plan. Somebody sold me that dream, and they showed me these diamond directs that had these big motor coaches and all this stuff and this freedom and no jobs. And I said, that's what I want. I want that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what it means today to me, that really, to be honest, as we go through this whole job career for me until kind of last year, I didn't realize the trading time for money situation. So some people that watch some of my Instagram stuff will say, oh man, this guy's known for years that he doesn't want to continue to trade time for money. Not true. That just came to me. But I think this was the start of that, actually.
Well, what's hitting for me right now and meeting you at this space is that the happiest people are always looking to grow and always looking to learn and have that humility of like, I have yet to arrive. I'm always a work in progress, a masterpiece simultaneously, but a work in progress. So you get into the car industry and you're obviously you've got to start at the bottom, right? But somehow you went from the bottom to through COVID. Explain what happened in COVID. I want to just jump right into that because that's a crazy story.
Well, just to clear up, and we'll do it in 60 seconds. I started selling cars, and I went from selling cars to the next level, which was a finance manager, to the next level, which was a sales manager. Now, this is an important point. In the finance manager world, it's an independent business. So like what I sell, what you eat, you kill. And what you kill, you eat, basically. Sorry, backwards. And in the sales manager job, you're pooling with everybody else, right? So there's 8 sales managers, and you could be the most extraordinary guy closing the majority of the deals, and you're going to share in the revenue that everybody else produced. Whereas in finance, it's what you've done, you get paid on. I took a 50% pay cut to go from a finance manager to a sales manager. Barb, it took me 2 years to get back to where I was as a finance manager. And that's an important lesson for people because I knew that if I didn't go to the sales manager desk, I would never be a general manager, which is where the big money was. So I took that step back. A lot of people won't take that step. I've met hundreds of people in the world in the car business that are finance managers that are making $200,000-$300,000 a year. And to be a sales manager, they'd make half that. And they won't take it, and they're going to live there forever. Whereas if they move forward, they could be a general manager and make $1 million a year, but they won't do it right? So that's a big part of my career. So I went through those steps, became a general manager, became a market manager for AutoNation, which is the company's largest, the US's largest auto retailer. And I spent 29 years there. And then I got a call from a prior executive who said to me of AutoNation, I'd like you to come be the CEO of this new company. Now we had an impasse here at AutoNation. It was kind of the same thing as what happened at Pizza Hut. Not that it was easy, but I knew that I wasn't going to get to where I wanted to go if I continued to stay there. And it took me 29 years to figure it out. It's a long time. It should have happened 10, 15 years prior to that, but it didn't. So I get the phone call and this gentleman, Kevin Westphal, says, hey, Todd, I need a CEO. Now, unbeknownst to him, I had gone down to Texas and interviewed with a very upstanding gentleman who owned 35 car dealerships. He actually served 2 presidents on their staffs and was just the salt of the earth guy. And I was going to take a leadership role with him as a chief operating officer. And we were going to move to Dallas, Texas. And I get this call from Kevin. I want you to come as the CEO. And he tells me in the first 5 minutes exactly how he's going to compensate me, how he's going to pay me. And I get off the phone. Now, Barb, this was one day after I left AutoNation, one day. And Gina says to me, who was that? And I said, don't worry about it, because it just seemed too good to be true. I said, we're going to Texas. Well, as life would have it, as we know that these things happen in life and we follow plans, the Texas thing started to slow a little bit. And the thing in Boston started to heat up. Now, Gina did not want to go from where we were in Maryland at the time. Remember, I took her from South Florida to Maryland. We're in Maryland for 4 years, and now I want to take her to cold-ass Boston. She's not excited, but she'd go to Texas, and I'm talking about Boston. She's like, oh, my God, are we going to Boston? So ultimately, I took the Boston job. Here's another very important inflection point. I could have taken the easy job in Texas, but something told me this was the job for me. So I get up to Boston, and there's this company where the prior owner of these 35 car dealerships sold to a private equity company, and they were Prime Automotive. So they paired up with their 20 dealerships that they already own. So now they have 56 dealerships. So I go to interview for this job, and I Google GPB Capital, which is a private equity company. And I'm like, whoa, lawsuit, join our lawsuit. Dude. And I'm like, Kevin, what the hell is this thing? He goes, nah, don't worry about it. David Gentili, private equity owner, he's going to get out of it. He's going to get out of all this. He's negotiating with the SEC. It's going to be fine. Okay. So, Barb, we turn down the easy job. We pack our stuff and we go to Boston. January 6th, 2020, Todd takes over. They fired this guy who was the heritage owner. Everybody loved him. There were stanchions of him in all the car dealerships. And they fire this guy, and all the employees don't know why. All they know is they loved him, and he's now gone. And now this guy, Todd, comes in. And they don't like me. Why would they like me? They don't know me. They know I come from this big AutoNation, which they didn't like. So I walk into this disaster, January 6th of 2020. So here's where the story really begins. And this is where life skills just give you what you need. I remember sitting at my desk and saying, okay, I've got to get the team on board. So what's the best way to do that? I'm going to go to every single dealership, and I'm going to give them 3 simple goals. And I didn't take 3 or 4 days to figure these out. Barb, I think it took me 10 minutes, honest to God. I said, number 1, what we've got to do is we got to get the employees back online, and we got to make sure that they understand that we're going to make this the best place to work. Whatever state we operate, we're going to be the best employer in the auto retail space. That's number 1. Number 2, we got to make sure that we have loyal customers and satisfied customers. So we're going to make sure that we're good there. And number 3, we've got to make sure that these auto manufacturers are on board with us, because in the auto space, if the auto manufacturer is not on board with you, they terminate you. And they weren't too excited because their private equity owner that they're partnered with was, basically had some issues with the SEC. Not good. And they were very, very apprehensive about me and AutoNation because they didn't necessarily like AutoNation. So Todd walks in. But what I did right is I took these 3 things, and I took my executive team, and we went to every single dealership, and we did town hall meetings. And I spent about 5 minutes telling about who I was. and tell them about what the three things we were going to focus on. And I spent as much time as we needed asking questions on what they needed and how I could help them. And I also bribed them with Dunkin' Donut cards so I could get some responses. True story. Dunkin' Donut cards. Nobody wants to talk.
Damn good investment.
Okay, guys. First person who asks a question is going to get a Dunkin' Donuts card, right? And so, Barb, we played that out. Now COVID comes, right? So they don't trust me when I go do this, but they're like, all right, well, this guy's not a jerk. Now, the other important thing we did, whatever they told me they needed, if it was in reason, 24 to 48 hours later, it was there. So we got a computer issue. We don't have enough computers. They're broken. The IT team was there fixing the computers. We got potholes in the parking lot. There was somebody there repaving the parking lot. Literally anything that I could do immediately, we did. And that built trust. And ultimately, the end of the story is going to tell you about trust. And that built trust. And all of a sudden, like, oh, so this guy rolls in, he asks us some questions, and he followed up and did some things. All right, we'll listen. So we kept doing that. We kept showing up and showing up and showing up and showing up. And then really the bomb drops February 4th of 2004. Now sit with me for a second. I'm in my board
February 2020.
2020. So what, 21? What year did I say? What year did I say? I said the wrong year.
Like 2004. we just went back 2 decades.
2021. Let's get it straight, Todd. So February.
So it's February 2021. Okay, over a year later.
2021. We have a board meeting.
Okay.
To my left are the folks, my executive team, my COO, my CFO, my general counsel. To the right are these characters from GPB Capital, the private equity company, and who should directly be next to my left is David Gentili, the president and owner of GPB Capital. He was from New York. This meeting was in Boston. I knew that he was in town because he rolled in the night before and had dinner with his team. The meeting starts at 9. No, David. 9:15, I start the meeting. Now, Barb, honestly, I'm thinking to myself, well, it's David. He's going to roll in late. No big deal. Whatever. By 11 o'clock, I had forgotten that David wasn't there. It just didn't matter, right? I'm rolling in on some important slides. We had a killer quarter, and I'm excited to present these numbers to the board. So as I'm going through one of the financial slides, my phone is blowing up to the point where, the bzz, 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 emergency, 911, call me now, ASAP, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just one after another. I turn the meeting over to my CFO. I walk out in the hallway and I call my PR person first thing, Nancy Sterling. Nancy, what's going on? Oh my God, Todd. David Gentili has just been criminally indicted by the SEC. He has turned himself in Boston. Okay, now, my CEO head and heart went to my feet. All the confidence that I had for the good numbers of those meetings went away. Scared to death. I mean, what do you do? Because now what am I faced with? I'm faced with all these manufacturers, now that we've got a criminal indictment, are going to terminate our businesses. My employees are most likely going to quit. What a disaster. We go in, we finish the meeting. None of his people knew this was going to happen. It was a shock to everyone. And basically what had happened was he had been negotiating with the SEC and they got sick and tired of it. So they went and got 8 states to file motions with him. And they went, boom, done. The guy's out. So we had to get him out of the company, even though we owned the company. And I had to go on this savage way of trying to save the company, calling the manufacturers, telling them it's going to be okay. Of course, they don't believe me at this point. All they're worried about is being in bankruptcy with these 56 dealerships. So this was quite the deal. But days later, I'm sitting in my office and I'm thinking to myself, what's going to be my biggest challenge? And my biggest challenge is going to be hiring and retaining great people during all this adversity, right? Of course it's going to be. And I'll tell you what, we went into a mode of, okay, what have we done? We've created a tremendous amount of trust with our people. Let's just go be transparent and let's tell them the truth. I mean, it's in the media. It's in the publications. It's on the news. It was in the Wall Street Journal. This is a big deal. $1.8 billion Ponzi scheme. $1.8 billion. What are you going to do? So I knew that I had to protect my people. I knew that I needed to keep my best talent. And I knew the only way I could do that was to be transparent with them. So as we fast forward to this deal, basically what happened was I was assigned a federal monitor, a federal SEC monitor who could work directly with me. That's fun. I had to testify to the SEC. That's fun. I had to testify to the Department of Labor because the prior owner had also gone to the Department of Labor and said that we were stealing the associates' 401k money. So I had these women come in to my office month 3 in the job and start to tell me how we were stealing the 401k money, which in fact we weren't doing. And they threatened to take me out in handcuffs. This story has so many legs to it. We don't have much time today, but I think the message is, how do you get from that disaster to taking a company that when I got there in January 2020 was worth $250 million, and in November of 2021, 23 months later, selling it for $1 billion, 4x, and not losing a single general manager and not losing a key manager in the business during that period of time? And the answer is they trusted me, and I told them it was going to be okay. And we took the company and we sold it to a major consolidator that was the 3rd largest auto retailer in the country. And that was the story. And Gina and I got the opportunity to cash in, which we should have. And my executive team got the chance to cash in. But most importantly, the employees all have a good place to work. And number 2, all those investors that put their money into that GPP fund on the auto side, and we had about 62% of all the money that was raised on the 1.8 billion. All those investors are going to get the majority, if not all, of their money back. And prior to us getting there in this situation, they thought they were going to get 0. And as luck would have it, one of my neighbors across the street in South Florida invested $100,000 in that fund. So it became personal, and the SEC monitor said to me, Todd, I've got friends that invested in that. Todd, this is personal. I said, Joe, we're going to get them their money. And we did. And they're going to be paid out. And it's a win. So everybody wins. Trust, authenticity, and full transparency. That's it. That's what got us through.
Well, you're a man of your word. That's what I'm writing down over here. You said what you said and you did what you said you were going to do. And that's integrity. And your actions speak louder than words. I mean, there's so many takeaways in this. I need to do like a part 2 so that my audience gets to understand like even full circle, because there's so many teachable moments in this, because I imagine you had to modulate fear, panic. You have a family, you've moved them to Boston, you have all these eyes on you. You are responsible for putting food on people's table, and all bets are on you. And you just you led from the front. And I am so grateful that our paths have crossed, as crazy as it is. It turns out we met through social media on Clubhouse. Right. And what an amazing story. And now you're down in South Florida. You got 2 great kids. Yeah. You've got the most gorgeous wife on planet Earth. I mean, you're really living the dream, Todd.
We are.
What is?
We really are.
You really are. And it's not lost on you. And that is what you are. It is not lost on you. And I find that so endearing and something that I truly connect with you on. And Gina, that you are living a really great life, but it's nothing you don't take for granted. You don't see, feel, taste, appreciate and now you're like getting in great shape and you're in real estate and you're doing keynotes. What is in store now? And then I'd love for you to tell the audience how they can get in touch with you and if you have anything that they could download.
Yeah, well, listen, I think the most important part, and again, timing's everything, and I do believe in manifestation at this point, and I'm reading a lot of books, and you and I shared a bunch of those books on things that really, when you look back at it, if I had gotten rid of the resistance in a lot of these things and just said, hey, it's going to be fine, it's going to work out the way it's supposed to work out, I would have saved myself a lot of agita, right? But so today I live in a place that says, I know it's going to be good. There's certainly nothing that I can imagine that could trump that professionally. I'm sure personally you've gone through a lot of things that are far more difficult. The cancer and the other things in your story. But from a business standpoint, there's nothing more that I could ever do that's going to trump that deal, period. So from here, it's a piece of cake. And so what we're doing now is I am the CEO of Ascendant Trucks. And what we're doing is we're buying big truck dealerships, heavy duty trucks, and we're rolling them up and we're scaling them, and we're going to build that out in 4 years, and we're going to exit that in either a private equity sale, a public sale, or whatever. And myself and the executive team obviously are equity owners in that deal, and we'll share in that. And in the meanwhile, I'm preparing myself to tell this amazing story. And obviously we rushed through it, and I jumped around a little bit because there's a lot to tell, and there's a lot of inner pieces that we didn't get to. We can get to in a part 2. But we're going to tell that story in a keynote. And ultimately, I've put that together with a gentleman by the name of Pat Quinn, who's done some amazing keynote writing, and he loves the story. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk to people about how they can hire, retain, and develop the absolute best people. And most leaders out in the business world, if not all, need good people, right? They're short of good people. And that's going to be our message. And to that end, I've got a little something for your listeners here. And if they just basically go to ToddRSkelton.com, I'm going to give the 11 tips of hiring great people, attracting great people, and the things that we used at Prime to bring on the best folks. Go in there, put your email in, and you'll download that list for free. There's no attachment or anything to that. And I think that'll help you. And there's more to come on that front. So that's the type of thing we're going to do. And then also, I'm very actively engaged in Clubhouse, CEO Central. We do rooms on Sundays. We've got 26,000 members in that club. And most importantly right now, Todd Skelton, CEO, on Instagram. I'm doing a daily post of just some of the things that I've learned. And ultimately, I believe what I want to do is help other people to not have to go through all the things that I went through and learn through them, and take some of those adversities and make it easier, period. That's it.
Well, I absolutely love it. And the one thing that I also wrote down is it is all about people and recruiting, retaining, developing strong people and bringing out the best in them. It's like everybody wins. All ships rise in high tide. So we are going to meet again at some point and really dive into the power of people and what it really means. Because when you help them, the byproduct is your ship rises in that high tide. So Todd, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I love you, your wife, your family. I am grateful for this opportunity, and thank you for being my first guest in season 2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the Bearing It All podcast, where we explore what it means to live your best life. To stay connected, go to BarbaraMajeski.com and leave us your email. We'll keep you posted on all that it means to have the health, wealth, and happiness that you deserve.